So, in your opinion, what would be a happy medium? If there was a happy medium, what would be a we've made progress to where we're on the right track? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the happy medium is it would just be looking at it purely from a human perspective. I think we should always think about what the victim's going through. And I think a happy medium to non-vegans would just probably be something like, hey, let's just go for the least cruel and least violent way to unalive these animals while still being able to take their flesh and consume their bodies and their byproducts. But I think, again, the moment you look at it from the victim's perspective, they don't care whether I mean, they don't care if you're going to unalive them in a non-violent way. You're still taking 90% of their life away. And if you don't need to do that, we shouldn't be doing that. So I think the true happy medium is just considering animals' actual well-being, considering their sentience, their awareness, their consciousness, and what's best for them, is to not unnecessarily rob them of their life just because we can. But I found
Mhm.
that really interesting what you were saying earlier, that you feel very conflicted. Have you watched the 3-minute video in my bio? Have you seen what you're paying for?
No, sir, I can't say I have.
Johan, could I beg you, like, before we get into this discussion, right? Could you just
Uh huh.
spend 3 minutes of your time, just quickly check that video out? It's watch the whole video 3 minutes, and then come back.
Ooh, hey, so honestly, when you say watch, I can honestly tell you I completed it, but I had to look away a lot of
Of course,
times
of course.
because
Not surprised.
that's a very hard thing to watch. And it goes back and it reaffirms for me conversations that I've had with my friends who have a genuine interest. And I've always said it, look at it this way. I know we have a tendency to say animals are put on this earth for us to consume their flesh. And I said, we say that because we're the dominant species. And if we weren't the dominant species, we could find ourselves in the same boat. Or have you ever seen anything that lives that's considered a living animal, right? We're not talking about plants, but animals. When you hurt them, they reverse themselves. They leave pain. Nobody wants to feel pain. So
Exactly.
even at the
Exactly.
lowest intelligent level, right? I'm not saying, I understand that a chicken isn't going to solve rocket science, but if I was to prick a chicken with a pin, it flees from that because it's
Exactly.
painful. So when oh my god, watching those chicks fall into that machine, I mean, I hope I don't seem like a giant baby, but it almost makes my eyes swell up.
I cried, bro. I have no problem admitting that. I think as men, we're told that showing compassion and caring about animals makes us weak or it makes us less masculine. That's so far from the truth. Because, again, not going into a big spiel here, but the true essence of masculinity is about protecting the defenseless, protecting the vulnerable, standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves. And naturally, as a man, when you see innocent, defenseless beings being harmed, and you know that you used to contribute to that, naturally you would feel emotional. And there's nothing demasculinating about that at all.
Yeah, it's a very hard thing to watch. As I talk to you, I'm already sitting there thinking like, okay, get it together, brother. Next time you have a meal, because you're off the next few days, keep it clean, keep it vegan, because there's a lot of good stuff out there I enjoy. But it really the struggle begins when I'm in public and I'm out with friends and the smells, the sounds, the socialization, the stigma of hey, it's the big game. Yeah, I'd like to have a 6 piece wing or something. It's that I get caught up in that, and then when I leave, I almost try to rationalize it to myself as I drive home in my truck. I'm like, you only had this much. You didn't eat a lot. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
Just don't
That
do it
shows you
again.
have a good heart, by the way, because you're constantly battling between whether what you did was right, whether it was justified. You're trying to make it shows that in your heart, you intrinsically feel the innate need to make changes and you feel the need to question whether what you did was okay or not. Most people would never even question that. And now that you've actually gone out of your way to see what happens, I understand, by the way, most of society have never seen these things. Most society think it's perfectly normal. That's the problem. When you're in society, most people aren't awakened or aware of these things, right? But does that now mean that just because a vast majority of people are doing it, that it's justified? because I could give you the same scenario hundreds of years ago, right? And I'm not making these two things like analogous, so don't get me wrong, but I'm just giving you an example. Hundreds of years ago, in certain civilizations, slavery was so normalized, right? Everyone thought, hey, it's normal, you know, we own slaves. There may have been
Right,
select
right.
individuals who were like, no,
We've been
slavery is
detected
effed
on the
up. We
live.
should not own other humans as slaves. And other people would probably have the exact, there were probably humans like me and you having this exact same question hundreds of years ago, right? They'd be like, no, it's wrong to own humans as slaves. And they're like, but look, it's so normalized. Everyone's doing it, you know? It's legal, it's acceptable, it's moral, everyone's doing it. So why can't we do it, right? But then it comes down to the point where just because a vast majority of people do not see what they're doing as wrong does not now automatically make it right. And that is the exact same logic I would apply here. Just because most people
Right.
haven't seen what they're paying for, they haven't awakened, they don't have the same love for animals that me and you do doesn't make it now morally defensible to do what we're doing to them, especially if we don't have to. In the cases where it's done for survival or a medical reason, fair enough, that can make some kind of logical sense. But the moment we are just doing this for taste, pleasure, and convenience, that is where we all need to just wake up and go, why the hell are we still doing this?
I agree. I just
So,
want to get your thoughts on that. I mean, I don't like to think of myself as a bad person, you know, but it it's something that I battle and I struggle with, and therefore, almost a year and a half, maybe almost two, somewhere within there, I was doing really, really good. And I just happened to be on a trip in Minnesota, and we went to the Mall of America, and there was a food stand, and someone had me try something, and it had been so long since had consumed flesh that when I'll take just a little nibble, you know, and then it turned into a backslide, and it's been a battle ever since to maintain. And I get poked fun at sometimes, you know, like, oh my god, you know, you and your chickenless Caesar salads, you know, and then the dressings and stuff that you. I'm like, well, hold on. You know, I try to explain to them, you know, I do it for my health, you know, while you guys are over here, you know, ballooned up and you're coughing all the time, you know. I'm not trying to say I'm better than you, but hey, I'm a fit dude, right? And I try to watch what I eat, and I know there's a lot of stuff that's pumped into these poor defenseless animals so that we can consume them.
and
And I'm not about that, you
And by
know?
the way, that what you just told me there gives me the answer that I needed, right? When people actually go vegan, they're not
We've
going
been
vegan for, in
detected
a
on
lot of
the
cases,
live.
for health reasons, right? Because if somebody's going vegan for health reasons, that would typically be what we would call a plant-based diet. That would just only be applicable to the foods that they're eating. When somebody goes vegan, that means that they've connected to the ethical issues behind what is wrong happening to animals, which isn't just the diet, by the way. For your clothing, for example, you wouldn't want to pay for leather, you wouldn't want to pay for products to be tested on animals. So veganism extends beyond the diet. It's about just looking in your day-to-day life and going, hey, does this product derive from unnecessary harm to animals? Yes. Okay, I'm not going to pay for it. That's what the vegan would think. So it makes sense to me that you may have slipped in the past because you weren't doing it for the animals, maybe partly for the animals, but as you said, partly for your health as well. But when you do it for the animals, you're not going to wake up one day as somebody who loves animals and goes, you know what, I don't give a shit about animals anymore. I'm just going to pay for them to be harmed. That's why people who truly go vegan for the right reasons, they very rarely go back on that. But when somebody's going plant based because they want to try out a new diet, or somebody's going plant based because it's a trend, yes, those people will switch up all the time because they were never truly vegan to begin with, because they
Right.
misunderstood what veganism means. Most people actually think that veganism and plant based is the same thing. They think that somebody who has a plant-based diet is vegan. No, that's not the case, right? For example, if I follow a plant-based diet and I buy a shampoo that was tested on animals, that's not vegan. So obviously that would mean I'm not a vegan, right? But that's the problem.
Right.
That's why when most people join my lives and they go, oh, I tried to be vegan, it didn't work out, they think that because they tried to follow a plant-based diet, they tried veganism, but that's not the case. But anyway, I'm curious, like, so from seeing that video, like, do you feel like you're going to be making any changes in your life going forward?
Well, so I'm a very honest person, and I would tell you yes. I can see it, I can feel it. You know, I do my grocery shopping on Mondays, and I can already tell you there's going to be some changes to what I bring into my home, right? I think that, like I told you in the beginning, my struggle is going to be to maintain, right? And it's a hard. I think a lot of my friends who I've talked to, it's a hard lifestyle when you say, okay, I'm going to be a vegan because of the animals, right? And that is, like you said, more than just food. That's the your shampoos, that's your soaps, that's your it's a lot of different things that go along with that. And it can be a very difficult road because unfortunately a lot of places do not cater to that. And so it becomes an Amazon search, or you have to go to certain places that do cater to that. And unfortunately sometimes those things are just a little bit more expensive, and it can be difficult. So
So
yes, the answer is yes, and hopefully be able to stay on the right track.
yeah, sorry, sorry to interrupt there. I just felt the need to address those 2 points. So one, from a cost perspective, by the way, just so you know, whole food plant-based diets have been shown study after study after study to, at the bare minimum, either be equal to or cheaper than diets containing meat and dairy, right? There was a study done by Oxford called The Global and Regional Cost of a Healthy and Sustainable Dietary Pattern. It did exactly this. They looked at the grocery shoppings of vegans compared to the grocery shopping of omnivorous diets to get both your essential nutrients on a plant-based diet versus omnivorous diets. Studies show time and time again that plant-based diets are cheaper than omnivorous diets. So actually, you will find that
Oh,
in most
absolutely.
first world countries, you can actually save money on a plant-based diet. Now, what I will grant you, is it a bit more challenging to begin with? Absolutely, right? If you are making any kind of change in your life that requires you to spend a bit of extra time doing a bit of research or looking at alternatives, naturally that's going to be more challenging than not doing it. But now here's the question that you need to ask yourself. Is that few minutes search, or that few minutes that it takes you to do a bit of additional research, is that worth not paying for an animal to be unnecessarily harmed? And that now becomes a question to you. Do you think that the animals that are having these shampoos and these conditioners poured into their eyes or their private areas, as millions of rabbits and rats are being tested on, do you think that you having a minute saved by not looking for a plant-based alternative, do you think that 1 minute of time that you saved is worth paying for that animal to be tested on?
No, no, it's okay. I think I may have said that wrong. It's not the consumables. It's the like what we eat. It's the things like shampoo, toothpaste,
That by the way, that
that type
literally
of
that
deal.
so by the way, right? So when I initially went vegan, I obviously had to find a brand. I found a brand that I like, and now I just when I do my Amazon shop, when I order things, it's just in my grocery shopping list, right? You need to
Yeah,
remember that the adjustment phase is not a permanent phase. Yes, when you first go vegan for the first few weeks, you're going to be experimenting, you're going to be trying different products, you're going to be looking for other alternatives. Yes, then you may be spending a few, extra 10, 20 minutes here and there, maybe an hour when you do research and stuff. The moment you're a few months in and you've adjusted and you know what products you like, you know what you enjoy, it's exactly the same as you going shopping now. When you go to the grocery shop, you know what you like, you know what aisles to go down, you know what products to buy. You don't spend extra time having to think and question things. It will be the exact same thing when you've adjusted to being a vegan. You're not going to always be in the
excuse me.
shop, always looking at every product, reading everything. No. You don't have to do that. Once you get adjusted a few weeks in, you'll go, okay, I've tried this. I like it. I'm going to take that. I'm going to take this. I'm going to take that. So that adjustment period is very temporary. And again, I think in specific instances like me and you, if we care about these animals, I think that adjustment period is absolutely worth it if we know that we don't have to cause them pain and we're doing what's right for them.
Absolutely, I agree. I agree.
And by the way, Johan, if you're, is that your name? Sorry, Johan.
Johan, but
So, Johan, I
yeah,
apologize.
you were very
Apologize.
close. Yeah, it was all
Yeah, so
right.
I think if we're ever questioning whether something is worthwhile doing or not, there's a saying that we're all taught as children. It's in the Bible. There's in many places, right? It's simply do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. If you're ever curious or wondering whether you should or shouldn't do something, just ask yourself, if you were the being harmed, if you were the victim, what would you want to happen to you? And that's why that's the ethics that I carry to every being, whether it's a fly, a spider, I don't give a shit. If I see a being in front of me, I'm going to treat them exactly how I would want to be treated if I were them. So when I see a spider, I put them on a paper and I let them out my window. If I see an insect that's injured, like I saw a bee that was injured a few days ago, I gave them sugar water. I let them out. I sat with them. I made sure they were okay. That is exactly how I would want to be treated, and if I was them. And I don't think that their size, their intelligence, their color, their skin, their amount of legs they have, I don't think any of that matters. The moment, as you said, my friend, if they can feel pain and suffer, none of the other shit matters. The moment a being
Right.
can suffer and feel
Right.
pain, their intelligence doesn't matter, their level of their skin color doesn't matter, the amount of legs they walk on doesn't matter, the sound that emits from their mouth doesn't matter. If they can be harmed and feel pain and we don't need to harm them, we should treat them exactly how we would want to be treated.
No, absolutely. Man, I
Amazing.
appreciate the conversation, man. I really do.
Thank you so much for your time. And just to clarify, you said that going forward, you are honest, as you said. You said you're going to actively make an effort to reduce your consumption. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
I got you on follow, and I'm going to give it some time, and I'd love to come back and kind of
Always welcome,
maybe
brother.
give you an update, on what things look like.
You're always welcome to come up. And by the way, just before you go, what advice would you have for the people here that haven't watched the video, who don't know what they're paying for? What would you say to them?
I would tell you this: if you have any humanity in you whatsoever, even in the smallest amount, and you understand that living beings suffer, if you would take the 3 minutes, which is almost no time at all, and watch that video to see how these living creatures, these animals are treated, you would at least pause and ask yourself, wow, is there anything that I can do in my life to ease that suffering? So I think it's worth a watch, and that's not me trying to promote or get kudos or anything. I mean, it's a raw video to watch, and it will give you pause, most definitely.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate that. And as I said, you're always welcome up. If you need any help or advice and stuff, then please do join. But thank you so much for caring about the animals. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, buddy.
Have a great night. Take care.
You too.